and I'll let them in now.
Good Monday morning, everyone. My name is Mike Prue, Department Chair of Science and Mathematics, and I would like to welcome everyone to the open forum. Will you have the opportunity to hear directly from today's CEO candidate, Dr. G. Duncan Harris. I first would like to lay the format and ground rules of the forum. First, I will introduce the candidate. Secondly, the candidate will then give a brief 10 or 15-minute introduction and biography of his qualifications for consideration as Capital Community College's next CEO. I will then kick off the forum with 2 questions of our candidate, which should further help inform us of the candidate's ability to effectively lead Capital Community College. Next, you, the attendees, will be able to send through the chat feature of WebEx any questions you would like the candidate to address. I will moderate the chat room and select questions to ask the candidate for the remainder of the session. I will conclude the forum at the scheduled time of 11:30. Before I begin, I ask all of you to make sure your phone or computer is on mute during the entire session. If there is too much noise from unmuted devices, I will interrupt the forum and we will force mute all devices. I will now introduce the candidate and provide a brief bio. Dr. G. Duncan Harris serves as the Interim Chief Executive Officer of Capital Community College in Hartford, Connecticut, responsible for strategic direction and daily operations of the college. Previously, he served as the Dean of Student Affairs at Manchester Community College. While at MCC, he also served as Acting Dean of Academic Affairs, Associate Dean of Academic Affairs, Counselor Coordinator of Academic Advising, and Interim Director of the Center for Student Development. He is recognized as an expert in student affairs, has served as a NESHE evaluator, has been invited to lecture on the field to graduate students, and serves as coach to many student affairs professionals. In 2014, he launched the CSCU Student Success Center as the founding executive director. He is affiliated with several state and national organizations and serves as a commissioner on the American Association of Community Colleges Student Success Commission and on the board of directors of the following organizations: the National Council on Black American Affairs, Food Share, Windsor Federal Savings Bank, Capital Workforce Partners, Campus Compact, and the BSL Education Foundation. Dr. Harris has received a number of awards for his leadership and contributions to the community, including the CCSU Distinguished Alumni Counseling Professional Award, NASPA Region 1 Community College Professional Award, and the Connecticut African American Affairs Man of the Year Award. Dr. Harris holds a Doctorate of Education from Nova Southeastern University, a Master of Science degree in Counseling from CCSU, a Bachelor of Science degree in Economics from UConn, and Certificate in Management and Leadership from Harvard University. He resides in Windsor, Connecticut, with his wife Garcia and 2 children, Grant and Grayson. I present to you Dr. G. Duncan Harris.
Hello, everybody. I'm just delighted to be here, speaking about my credentials and desire to be the permanent CEO of Capital Community College. Let me first start by thanking everybody for the well wishes for myself and my family regarding my recent diagnosis with COVID and having contracted that. I'm faring very well. Probably at about 100%, if there's such a thing. My doctor cleared me to return to work last week. He didn't realize that I never stopped working. I guess he doesn't know me very well. And my wife and children are showing no signs of anything related to COVID and are doing exceptionally well. I wanted to, just another update, I'll be going on Wednesday. I was selected to participate in the plasma testing, so I'll be going on Wednesday to St. Francis to participate in that. I wanted to acknowledge, the work that our allied health and nursing faculty have been, that they're going through right now. I've seen a number of the posts with our nursing faculty and that are double dipping and they're serving in hospitals and teaching classes and are on the front lines. I know that Dan Tauber is doing doubles and triples, paramedic, and so I wanted to acknowledge and honor, the service that Capital Community College is providing during this pandemic and unique situation facing our country and community. I am very concerned about, what will occur, when Hartford hits its peak. We see how other urban centers are being impacted, and I'd imagine that we will not be immune to some of those outcomes. But I will be a champion with regard to speaking to folks about it and continue to encourage the distancing and doing all that we can to flatten the curve. Sure. So I wanted to open with that. One of the things that as I was preparing for the, this interview, I recognized that oftentimes I'm on the other side of this. And so, during my 22 months at the college, I've had the opportunity to hire and onboard large numbers of faculty, staff, and managers at the college. And I know that whenever I'm looking to hire somebody, I always seek to determine, how do I know? Right? What's the evidence? I imagine at a certain point, once they get to me, all the finalists, have the prerequisite, education and credentials and experience. But how do I know that this individual is the right person, the right fit for us at Capital? And what I wanted to relate to you guys is once again, or just this idea that you guys, in addition to the materials that I submitted, prerequisite, meeting all the requirements as described in the job description, but you also have 22 months of me actually performing the job, as CEO of Capital Community. I didn't go about it as a temp or it's just, and from day one, July 2nd, 2018. I went about it to fulfill all the obligations and requirements of the position. And, as I was going through in preparation for this, and I looked at, what we've accomplished. I'm not a big I guy. I'm a we, and it's noteworthy. I think that we've, in some regard, certainly served students, that we've begun to redefine our role in service to, Hartford and Greater Hartford. And I've been, I was truly, say impressed, but also felt that we've accomplished much together during this 22-month period. So as we're seeking to how do you know, and as you seek to have evidence, whether that's qualitative, quantitative, or artifacts that demonstrate, security in making a decision, I think that there's a body of work over the last 22 months that would suggest that. How I got to Capital, you should know, I and you see my resume, worked at Manchester Community College for 22 years. I'm a nester. I'm a Connecticut guy. No intention on going anywhere. My wife and I decided to raise our family here. I have a 25-year-old who, grew up in Windsor, and we have a ninth grader and a seventh grader. So I'm a nutmeg guy. No intention on going anywhere else. See, once again, deep and meaningful work. I'm a builder. I like the idea of working with others to accomplish, things in service to others. And so, when I was at Manchester, I had always been looking at capital. I think Josiah reminded me that in around 1997, 98, I was a tutor in Capital's tutoring center, and I tutored English and economics and computers. And so I was working there. And, I met Lilium at that time, Josiah. I think Connie Carter was, with the center or something at that time. And so, over 20 some odd years later to come back in the roles of CEO and serve. But I've, grew up in Bloomfield, went to UConn, but a lot of my work, and I lived in Hartford probably for 3 or 4 years. I lived in Franklin Avenue and Park Place Towers. And I've always had a thing for serving Hartford. I've done mentoring work at MLK, a fraternal organization that I'm involved with. I spent a lot of time in the area churches and giving back. I have a superintendent, and she was a counselor. We kind of came up in the ranks together, and she was a principal at Great Path Academy. And now we're both responsible for organizations in Hartford, and we have a relationship built over 20 years, trust and respect. Individuals in the corporate sector, travelers. I've developed a relationship with the mayor, and confidence in that they have in the work that we're doing at Capitol. So when President Nieves announced his retirement, and as I was, once again, I had been preparing for quite some time. I had been a member of the cabinet at Manchester for over a decade, 12 plus years, and under two different presidents there, and had been being groomed and participated in things with NECHI and the national scene and AACC and community work with chambers of commerce and various board chair, CHR, and different things. And so I had been putting together a body of work and experiences to be a president, but a matter of where. And so, when President Nieves announced, I said, I reached out. And, at that point, Gina Glickman had also announced her retirement at Manchester. And once again, I had a body of work and reputation there that I could have been a competitive candidate for the interim there. And I reached out to the president and said, well, what's the plan for Capitol? That's where I wanted to work and to serve. And, I felt that my talents would be of service there. And apparently at the time, the Senate had reached out also to President Ojakian, and they were desirous of bringing in external leadership. And so things happen for a reason, and I think that the 22 months that we've been together would be a testament that it was a good fit. Good fit for me, good fit for the institution. And so, once again, I have a deep passion and fall in love with the place, and feel as though we've begun to implement a culture, the institution of working together to improve outcomes for the students that we serve. The last thing I'll say on that in terms of the introduction is a little bit about Hartford. And, I had gone to do a presentation at Otis Elevator probably about a month ago. They invited me in to be one of their speakers for Black History Month. And I was talking about the college and our students. And I referred to, a tale of two cities in some regard with Hartford and insurance capital of the world and arts and culture. 100,000 people drive into Hartford every day to work and then leave oftentimes, to return to the suburbs. And we've got a lot of things going on with development. We're exciting time with Pratt Street and development there. Duncan Stadium, whether that's the Argos themselves and soccer. but also the plans for development in that space in southern Albany, and also plans in northern Albany, and some other investments that are being made. And so you have that side, but then also depending on the index that you're looking at, some of the economic indices would suggest that Hartford is the fourth or fifth poorest city in the nation, depending on how that's measured. And we have a number of our students impacted by poverty. And when you look at zip codes in 06, 105, 06, 106, 06, 114, and 06, 120, the average income for those areas is between 25,000 and 35,000 for household income. And, between those four zip codes, we have 833, 27% of our students reside in those zip codes that are suggested to be some of the poorest zip codes in the nation. And so, as we talk about, the work that we do and how, equity issues and inequity, impact, the students that are coming to us to have what we have, many of us on this line, which is security, the ability to provide for ourselves and our families. That's our clarion call, and it's good and noble work. And I feel as though, I want to be a part of that, and work to take that on and lean into that issue. Anna Stansberry from Harvard came to our equity summit in fall and mentioned and shared the nice factoid that I've been touting, that students that come to that Capital's in the top 5% of community colleges in the nation with regard to moving students to income quartiles. And so, once again, a student that comes to us from that 06, 120 median household income, $25,000 a year, that completes, Saeed's cybersecurity program, or that gets into our Edge program and all of a sudden is on the 15th floor of Travelers, or that completes our nursing program and is in a job at St. Francis. I think we're all aware of what that means for that family, for that individual. And, once again, that's truly good and noble work. I'd like to have the opportunity to continue in the role of CEO to continue to build on, what we've been doing over the last 22 months. So that's why I only applied for one position. I've been recruited for years, headhunters and ABG and AC and all these. Once again, I'm a nutmegger. I'm not intending to go anywhere. Capital is the only place that I would like to serve in the role of CEO, and to be there to lock arms with faculty and staff to once again take on and improve the lives of the students that come through the Spinney doors. So with that, I guess we'll open it up to questions. Or
Thank you, Dr. Harris, for your introduction. I am going to lead off the open question portion of the forum with the first two questions. I asked the audience to think about questions they would like me to ask of you, and they can send those questions through the chat feature. So question number one, what two qualities of a leader do you believe are most important in effective leading Capital Community College?
two qualities. I think that front and center is a servant heart. I think that I am a student and philosophically and aligned with Robert Greenleaf in terms of servant leadership. And during my time at the institution, my view is that the role of administration, while there's certainly things in terms of the authority and responsibility that we will, but is to serve and meet the needs of faculty with regard to resources and training and support and uplift and creating clear vision and things of that nature. And so I would suggest that, once again, the successful candidate would need to have the ability and a desire to come in and serve through providing support to individuals at the college and faculty. And that's, in my view, the role of one part of the role of administration. So that's key. And then the other thing in terms of leadership is to be able to set clear vision, for where we're headed, and kind of who we are, and get people to rally around that. It's interesting. The other day, and I won't mention any names, but I was on one of the WebEx calls, and it was interesting. I noticed somebody had on their band, and we've been wearing it, but that was something that when I first came in, and I could sense that people were very desirous of having a champion that was able to articulate clearly, our where we were headed, and that we were a destination institution for our region, vanguard institution with talented faculty and staff, and that our students were entitled to the best. And that's what we've been working on, and that's where we're headed. And so I early on, we stopped buying into best kept secret. And I'm not talking about hubris or overconfidence, but more a matter of an obligation to share, open our building. It's a daunting building in and as it is, but to bring people in, to extend out into the community, and offer ourselves to the students that would benefit, from connecting with our institution. So those would be the two, kind of this idea of the servant heart, willing to serve, clarity with regard to the role of administration, and then that second point with regard to the need to be a champion for the institution, to tout and have clear vision for where we're headed.
Thank you for your response, Dr. Harris. The second question I have for you before I take questions from our audience, given the current pandemic we are all living in, issues of equity for our students have been amplified with the transition to fully online classes. How do you define equity? And secondly, what are some strategies you would implement to mitigate the equity issues our students are currently facing and most likely will continue to face in the future?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Um, you know, as I defined equity, it's a focus on support for addressing the disparities that particular groups experience, and at disproportionate rates, right? And so the intent is to remediate those disparities so that they're have the same opportunity to experience positive outcomes as other groups, right? And so oftentimes, the equity is a process. You're seeking in terms of equity, and the outcome of that process is equality, right? And equality of outcomes. We've all seen the photo of the baseball stadium with the different individuals on the blocks. Interestingly, I've seen another version where there's no fence, and so so do you even have a fence that I would need a block to see over, or a ramp, or what have you? So I think as a campus community, as we begin to do a deeper dive into the equity work, that we're beginning to recognize, the impact on our students. Oftentimes in the past, we would talk about seeking college-ready students, and in and of itself, that almost is kind of this lack of awareness of some of the things that may have impeded an individual's ability to, as it relates to equity or inequity, be quote unquote, and I'll say that in quote, college ready. And so I think that as we become more and more of an equity-minded institution, that we're shifting and becoming seeking to become student ready, recognizing that many of our students who have grown up in systems of inequity come to us, and it's up to us to have systems and supports in place that address those issues, right? And so, with regard to the approach that we've been taking, you're aware that we've had, we're successful in applying for a grant to the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. And I've been truly impressed by the amount of engagement that we've had. We had a process where we vetted various consultants, and I think we landed on the right consultant for us in terms of KJR Consulting. And we've been engaged in deep and meaningful work as it relates to what equity means to us as a college community. And, developing, we're in the planning phase now. We're have at our second work group, which was a WebEx. I wasn't able to participate at the time. I've gotten good feedback from that. And we'll have our third work group coming up soon, which will allow us to write up our plan for implementation for how we develop a model to address inequity that plagues, many of the students that come through our doors. And there's a researcher, Benson, who talks about being equity minded. And, I think it's a framework to look at an institution where, once again, you're what is my role in addressing and recognizing inequity that impacts the student that I'm serving, and in what ways can I, through the way in which I engage the student, not cause that inequity that has plagued the students through their coming up to, further impact and impede their ability to have access to, positive outcomes in learning and degree or certificate completion. And so there's a lens, hopefully, that we begin to look at the students we serve, as an institution that will be informed by our work with our Equity Center and the consultant college community that I'm very excited about. I think it's the, in some regard, certainly one of the issues of the day for us at Capital, based on some of the data that I shared earlier about Hartford. Uh, so, so that's my take on equity.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Harris. Now going to select questions that our audience members have provided through the chat room. If you're in the audience, please feel free to ask a question of Dr. Harris. I will get through as many of the questions as possible in the allotted time frame. So question from one of the participants to you, Dr. Harris, is, would you please provide an example of when you set expectations and monitored the performance of subordinates?
Okay. Setting example of expectations and monitor. I'll take an example from my time at Manchester. We had a graduation rate hovering around 13%, either 11 or 13% at the time. And while, we recognize, not getting into the debate of, graduation being the most appropriate metric to assess, community college, progression, we're all aware of that, the disproportionate number of students that are part-time, level of high school preparation, the impact of DevEd on ability to complete in time and a half. But what we however we looked at it, we weren't satisfied with 13. We looked at some of our peer institutions and where they were hovering, and once again, time to degree, recognizing the importance of an individual. As much as we like having them on campus, we want them to move on to whether that's the world of work or transfer, what have you. And what we did was we deployed strategies to improve, graduation rates over a period of time. And part of my role as the chief student affairs officer at the time was to monitor and really, engage the staff working on that initiative. What resources were required. How are we using, a level of sophisticated, analysis to identify which students, have the ability to complete, within the time and a half parameters, and acknowledging the work and making progress over time. Needless to say, that the rate isn't at 13, it's hovering around 18. It got as high as maybe 19, at one point. But that was an occasion or an example where, we set a goal. We weren't happy with where we were at. However, it was managed, and part of my role was to monitor to make sure that we were indeed trending in the right direction, and to ensure that individuals kept their eye on the ball, and that we kind of chunked out progress over time. So that's one example.
Thank you for your response, Dr. Harris. We have another question. Many of us are concerned about what will happen to Capital, its role, identity, uniqueness, even its existence, if the BOR's one college plan is realized. Could you please speak to this concern?
Okay. Yeah. Oftentimes when I talk about students first, I'll talk about it, from two different hats. One hat is certainly an administrator in the community college system, for over 24 years at this point, who has worked at multiple campuses, has done a lot of work with the system, and who understands community colleges, locally, nationally, so deep understand. The other hat that I'll put on oftentimes is as Duncan, citizen nutmegger, taxpayer, person who's very interested in seeing our state operate and deploy, practices that have improved outcomes, and that are efficient with my tax dollars and resources. And so there's an element of that where, were I to be responsible for establishing a community college system for a state the size of Connecticut, I don't believe that I would build it in a way in which we established these institutions some 50 plus years ago, or in the 60s, right? And so, we're 1960s. So just this idea, I don't know that I would build it with 12 independent colleges with 12 of everything that aren't, leveraging buying power, that aren't, doing things at scale, in a state the size of Connecticut, where I could get from Stanford to, Stafford Springs in an hour and a half. And so there's a part of me that, gets that, all right, well, if there is an opportunity to build a college system, what it look like where we're at right now. And I'd imagine a number of people would suggest that it wouldn't. You add on that layer, the shortage of resources, diminishing funds. We have less and less graduates, so there's a compacting issues that impact our ability. And so at one point, they talked about closing the college, or two to meet the deficit. And once again, I think that there's haves and have-nots. There are campuses that are, the only thing in that area. I'm very familiar with rural community colleges, and where you just shut down a college in a rural area, the way in which you're impacting and denying access, to a way of life. Oftentimes they're the largest employers in those regions. So So which two, would you, so, so there is a piece to, the economics of the decision to consolidate and build one college that I get for whatever reason. Now, the other piece is when you unpack, some of the, performance rates of students of color across the state and Connecticut with the highest, levels of inequity in terms of, outcomes and that there are ways in which we can do things better that raise the bar for all students in the system. So there's that side that's, Harris, nutmegger, concerned citizen, but also, kind of getting the why it makes sense. And I am not concerned about us losing our entire identity. I don't think that when the proverbial switch goes on, all of a sudden students from Weaver, Buckley, Hartford Public, Sports Academy, Bloomfield, Windsor, East Hartford, they stop coming because it's the community college of Connecticut or Connecticut, whatever the name is. I don't think that they all of a sudden stop coming to us. I don't think that the faculty who are passionate about their disciplines and learning and educational outcomes that when that switch goes that they come into their class and they're detached and that they don't have the fire in the belly to see a student finally get differential equations. So I don't think that stops. I don't think that when I call, the Wadsworth, or I call a donor to invest in what we do at Capital in support of students, with John and his work foundation, that all of a sudden, wallets are closed because it's not Capital Community College, but it's the community. So I don't think that when the once again proverbial switch stops, that Capital stops achieving goals and transforming lives and meeting the needs and outcomes. In some regard, as an institution that has been plagued by, an expensive physical plant, cost of parking and an older building, and the contract with 960. That in some regard, I think that it might be to our benefit to be, financially, and as it relates to not having been resourced in ways in which some of our sister institutions have been, or based on their kind of formulaic budget formula. So I don't, I'm not, as worried as some that, the good and noble and fulfilling work and the way in which we support Hartford, changes and goes away. I don't think that, people stop picking up the phone, or that all of a sudden we're not doing our reentry work, or people aren't coming into events that we have at the college, or when Jeff goes out to gauge somebody in the arts community for Hartford, that all of a sudden that stops. And so, and I'm an optimist. You guys know that about me. I'm more optimistic than pessimistic, but I'm not naive. And I do think that, we can ensure that this is a good thing for Capital if we do it right. And don't get me wrong, I applaud, and it's very important for us to be at all the different tables that exist around Students First. And so when I see folks, at the BOR, front and center, I'm proud of those folks. At the same time, I'm proud of the folks that are, on some of these committees, contributing their talents and best thinking to some of the guided pathways stuff, or the whole list, all these other policies that I think it's important for Capital to be at the table, and for us, individuals that are passionate about their work and have spent their life, becoming content experts in disciplines or student success or whatever. They're in the middle of the table, saying, "Here's what we need to do," in this model, because of my experience and what I've learned over time. And so we need to be in both areas, but and so two sides: administrator, I get it, da, 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 but then also, nutmegger. I think it'll be ultimately good for for the state, and that we'll have some positive outcomes, and there'll be a leveling of having haves and have-nots within the system based on years of that's the way it is versus more equitable processes for deployment of limited resources.
Thank you very much for your response, Dr. Harris. I have another question that came in. During the last 22 months as interim CEO of Capital Community College, what has been the most unexpected challenge you faced?
Unexpected, COVID. I mean, I can't, you know, I have a lot of friends who are, presidents and CEOs, and we text California, and Virginia, and we're, no one could have foreseen this coming. And once again, I have just been so enamored and impressed by the way our college community has rallied. I was getting emails from folks worried about our students. Stephanie and her team, they're there, building computers, for students. Jason dropping them off at people's houses. We were able to get some good funding. We did, I don't know if I didn't tell everybody yet, but we got another 20,000 from the foundation, unrestricted. And we met with them and made that appeal last week. Faculty, it's spring break, in quotes. Meanwhile, they're working with Marie Farrell on converting all their stuff and lectures, to make sure that for that Monday, our students, our most vulnerable students that are impacted, once again, as some of the things that I shared with you guys earlier, are not given yet another setback due to this, pandemic. And so, crisis, the leaders, they do certain things. I'll share with you guys that message that I sent out. I wasn't sure about sending it, to be frank. It's very personal. I talked to my wife about it, and I wasn't sure, but something happened Thursday night. I sent it out on a Friday. I knew that I had to send it. As the leader of our college community, I think that it perhaps based on the over 100 replies that I got, some people had anxiety, some people had family members, and they had kids. They weren't sure if they were in harm, college students. Some people weren't taking it, and they shared as serious as they thought, or running around still without distancing and engaged in some of the activities. And so, once again, from a leadership perspective, I'm so very glad that that was a way in which I could be helpful during this crisis to us and to our community. Once again, so in terms of the challenge of leadership, this COVID. Now, the other thing that I'll say about this is that I think we'll on the other side, that we'll even more connected as a college community, having been through it together. I think that there are some things that we're building and creating now that will make us and even more strong. Whether that's some of the stuff going on in student affairs, faculty are developing content. I quote unquote used to be a techie. I used to manage a lab. I used to be up on all. And so, once again, for me to get back into tech in a very different way, recognize the, once again, that it's a tool. It's not an ML or an elixir, but how you integrate that in productivity. I think that there'll be some byproducts of this that will make us an even stronger institution. And so, yeah, hands down, up, COVID. And I will say, this is the faculty said, we have a hell of a management team in place too. There's a lot of things I'm on a call every Tuesday with the system office, and there's a COVID team, and the way in which our administration at the college has stepped up to make sure that we haven't missed a beat. People are paid on time, and that IT is up and running, and faculty feel supported. We didn't miss a beat or a step, and so just thoroughly impressed. Well, once again, leadership challenge, hands down, up, sideways, COVID.
Thank you very much for your response, Dr. Harris. Another question from the audience. During your interim at Capital, enrollment has declined, which we all know has declined across the state in general. What would you do as full-time CEO to increase enrollment going forward?
Sure. I think, once again, there tends to be an inverse relationship between enrollment and the economy. When there are jobs and full employment, people tend to choose to work instead of going to school. Connecticut also has a declining high school graduate rate of over 1% per year. So there are less graduates coming out. There's increased competition. And so when you unpack, our decline in enrollment, there are not excuses, but very rational reasons for the decline. And what I would suggest is had the SEMC and the leadership not deployed some of the strategies that we've deployed over the last year, be even more than that. And so that number is a good number based on us doing everything that we could to maintain. I do feel, and this is it's interesting, not to tie everything to COVID, but I'd imagine that students, and I actually had a talk with the superintendent of schools. We've been texting back and forth a little bit, Dr. Leslie Torres Rodriguez, and I mentioned to her, I said, please, be aware that Capital would like to support you and this year's seniors who, have been thrust into a situation where, imagine a number of their plans have gone awry. And, we're not even sure where the virus will be in the fall. They're suggesting that may decline a little bit over the summer and then possibly pick back up. You have a situation where there are students this spring that were we closed the dorms down and things like that, and so that they're home. So interestingly, Capital may experience a spike in the fall. And I know that I mentioned that at the SMC meeting this week because students, do I spend $40,000-$50,000, put this deposit down, and potentially go away to be sent back home, or to be in an environment that so there's some trauma that this year's seniors are experiencing, and so once again in my conversation back and forth with the superintendent, I said that Capital would like to be a part of your plan for how you'll support this year's seniors. Interestingly, they're already more versed than they've ever been, probably in any class of seniors with regard to online and how they've been thrust into this situation. And so there's a piece around enrollment, though, that despite diminishing enrollment, the last few, which is tied to the economy, diminishing high school graduates, competition, et cetera, that I do feel, and then also once again, oftentimes it's tied to a recession. Unfortunately, that there's a spike in enrollment. So we got to get ready. I know that the academic affairs group has developed 8-week classes, which is an innovative approach to increasing and growing enrollment. I think that some of the work that we've done around, hopefully that we're able to continue, but around college career pathways, I know that we've doubled down in our work with Weaver Buckley and Hartford Public, talking to them about articulated classes, increasing dual enrollment, and then building relationships. We had, the open house that we hosted, packed house. Some of the counselors that were here that day indicated that they hadn't been to Capital. They're thoroughly impressed. And I think that, I had an opportunity to talk to the folks there, and it's a matter of developing confidence. you have these guidance counselors. I got a bunch of friends that are guidance counselors. They help raise these students. They've been with them 4 years. And who do I trust? Who do I want to send this person, this young person that I care about, uh, where the likelihood of them being successful and continue to leverage the investment I've made as a guidance counselor in this young person. And so I think that Capital has begun to do a better job of developing those relationships with our area high schools. I've met with a number of the superintendents, East Hartford, Weathersfield, Hartford, of course, Bloomfield, to build the relationships and to say, trust us to, provide a quality education for your students and get them to whatever their goal is, whether that's transfer or the world of work.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harris, for your response. I am going to provide you with the last question. And after your response to this question, I'll give you a couple minutes to make final remarks.
Okay.
So the final question is, as the next CEO, your responsibilities will lie in a deeply matrixed organization as a result of Connecticut's student first consolidation of all the community colleges. How will you balance the needs and concerns of faculty, staff, and students versus the directives of the system leadership?
Yeah, so sorry, I'm gonna have a dry cough probably for the next month or so. But so for folks that may not be aware, matrix organization is where you have kind of hard lines and then dotted lines in terms of reporting. And so a practical example, we've already begun to deploy the matrix organization. And so, for example, while Jenny Wang is on campus, she's and in the org chart, she's kind of a dotted line to me, but her hard line report is to Bill Gamble in terms of that organization and within the region, David Nielsen. And so while that's an example of a matrixed reporting relationship. And so similarly, Stephanie Calhoun, is in that situation where she reports through Joe D and Joe T in that organization. However, still hard dotted line to myself and Eddie on campus, etc. We have another example in terms of Josephine Agnello-Velli, who, while she's dotted line to me, there is hard line to the Vice President of HR, Andy Kripp, and that organization for all of our HR. So this is already happening. And I think that my experience has been that it's, that it's worked out. I mean, I think we built structures and mechanisms where, whether that's Jenny's role in SCMC, we still maintain all of the meetings and things of that nature. So the relationships exist. Interestingly, one of the things that I'll having lived in this environment for the past few months, and then Stephanie has been longer because one of the things that we did was when Roger retired, we never replaced that. And so Stephanie has been, kind of one of the models for the Matrix organization based on the support that we received from the system for IT. And so there's a piece to it where, for a school that has challenges financially with resources, us being able to leverage system office resources through those individuals for supports has been a huge support. So, for instance, Stephanie's relationship with Joe D and Joe T, has resulted in us, receiving some additional, laptops and things like that they pay for, different other types of support that have come directly from the system. And so, in the long run, I think what one of the byproducts of being in a matrix organization is for a school that has had a difficult time maintaining, balanced budget based on some of the things I mentioned earlier with the cost of that it may result in us having and being resourced in a way which we haven't historically, to the good, and by jettisoning some of the expense for some of those. So, experience with it, I feel like we haven't missed a beat. Jenny and I continue to meet every week. Josephine and I meet every week. Stephanie is, in terms of the work with Eddie or me, keep me in the know. It's been pretty transparent. Hard lines, dotted lines. So I really don't feel as though, down the road, folks they won't feel connected to the campus. I think, where you go to work oftentimes matters. Even though you may report to somebody at 61, your relationships, your kind of daily operations, who you're supporting, goes on the campus. And so that's my thoughts on that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harris, for your response. I'd now like to give you the opportunity, we have a few minutes left, to make any final remarks that you feel will help better inform us of your ability to effectively lead Capital Community College into the future.
Great, thank you. Well, I just wanted to thank everybody who took the time today to join in and hear my thoughts on why I am the most qualified candidate for the position. As mentioned earlier, when I looked at the job description and looked at the qualifications and requirements, I certainly feel as though I've met, and in some instances exceeded certainly the requirements to be a chief executive officer. And I think one of the things oftentimes, as you attempt to differentiate candidates, I think that one of the things that stands out in my circumstance is the fact that I've been doing the job for 22 months. And that there's a lot of data that folks who will chime in and make an informed decision about who the preferred candidate is that you have access to. Should I be the selected candidate? You're not going to see a lot different. I do think that there's a piece to kind of the permanency that's attractive, but it's not as though the relationships that I've developed with many of you, the support that I've provided, certain instances, as I was thinking about just all the work that we've done over the last 22 months. What I'm really seeking is the opportunity to continue that. I feel as though we're just getting started, and that we've put some pretty amazing things in place. And so what I'm seeking is an endorsement that what we've done, what you guys have seen, how we've worked together, that's something worthy of continuing, and that there's not a need to go in a different direction based on what we've done to date. And so once again, as I mentioned when I first started, is that oftentimes I'm in the other seat where I'm hiring, and that many of you guys that are on the line I may have fired. And but when you sit in my chairs in my office, and then we're talking about kind of the place, and what's required, and what I'm listening for is evidence, artifacts, and once again, and in some instances I've been fortunate to see people in action, and make a decision based on evidence in a similar way to the evidence that you guys have about me. And so once again, what I'm seeking is that your review of the 22 months would differentiate me from other individuals that have articulated interest in capital, and that you would make your decision endorsement of my candidacy based on what you've seen, what we've done together, and a desire to keep going. And so with that, I'm just thankful, of the time that we've spent, and forward to the next part of the process.
Thank you very much.
11:30.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Harris, for your time and your candidness. Finally, for all in attendance today, you'll receive a follow-up email that has a video recording of this forum and an online survey for you to fill out. I ask that all of you take the time this week to fill out the survey. Thank you all for attending, and please stay safe.